Hello everyone, bringing you a video today talking about some more New Zealand uniform. And what we have here is a shirt and trousers making up the basic sort of jungle green uniform issued to New Zealand troops in the 1970s. As we'll get into the video, I'm not entirely sure on the introduction date for these two items of clothing, but we have a drill shirt here and drill trousers, which we're going to look at in a little bit more detail. Obviously set up on the mannequin here with the beret and belt just to set them off a bit. I'll take those away now and we'll have a look at the features of these two pieces of clothing in a little bit more detail. We'll take a look at the shirt now in detail. If we have a look at this here, you can see it's a full fronted design, opens all the way down the front there. We have two pockets on the front here with a pointed flap, single pleat down there. Very simple design, typical of military shirts of the period. Made in a green cotton drill. Plastic buttons, these are of the small, but very similar to bath dress pattern, but slightly smaller. These are found on British combat clothing, on adjustment tabs and so forth, British tropical combat clothing of this time period as well. So the British style buttons, if you will, being used here, 4-hole buttons. It does button right up to the collar if you want it to, obviously generally worn open, as you can see there. There are actually little darts in the collar there, little, forget what they're called now, collar stays, I think. Not accessible, but they're sewn in there, so to keep the collar pointed and flat. Epaulets on the shoulders, we'll have a look at those when we move this round. As I say, fairly simple design, but this is what New Zealand was issuing in the 1970s and, as I say, into the 80s. We'll move this round now and we'll have a look at the left-hand side. Looking at the left-hand side here, we'll start at the top and you can see the epaulette there, another of these small buttons on the epaulette to secure it at the top there, worked into the seam of the shoulder, as you can see there. The cuff, very simple design with a single button there. If we open this up, there is no gusset in there, or a very small one at the top, but makes that nice and easy to roll up. A single small button there, as you can see. We'll move this round now and have a look at the back. Looking at the back here, we can see a seam across the shoulders. Turn up the collar there, there's no more real detail to see there, very simple. Standard shirt collar, slightly longer skirt, slightly longer tails at the rear than at the front. And that's basically the shirt. There's no point looking at the right hand side. There's nothing else to see that's different from what we saw on the left hand side. Okay, so we have the shirt turned inside out now, and you can see the details of the construction. You see the stitching for the pockets on the chest there. You can see the seam on the shoulder, round on the arm and down the side there. We'll just turn this round and have a look at that on the left hand side. With this turn round to the left, you can see if we raise the arm here, you can see the seam running down under the arm and carrying on all the way down the side of the shirt there. We'll move this round now and have a look at the rear. You can see the stitching of that reinforced section, the seam which we saw over the shoulders there. You can see the inside of this here, reinforcing piece across the shoulders. And you can see in the collar here, if I turn that up, you can see the label here, which we'll get a close-up of now. A very nice, clearly printed label, nice bold letters. Army property, which is a common thing to see on New Zealand issue clothing. And then we have McGrath Manufacturing Company, 1978. And size 6, which gives a neckband of 16.5. So I've put the trousers back on the mannequin here. I think it's a little bit easier to look at some of the details with them on the mannequin. And these are essentially based on the British 1950 pattern in having the waist closure formed from two belts which buckle around each side on the hip. And these cross over and buckle on each side. It's a very effective way of pulling the waist in evenly on each side, as opposed to having an adjustment just at the front. For example, with Second World War tropical clothing, with the two buckles at the front where you just cinched in at the front basically. This evenly adjusts the waist on each side. My understanding is the original logic behind this was if you're on a long range jungle patrol, you are going to lose weight and you could cinch the trousers in, sort of from experience during the Second World War with the Jint operations, for example, where men lost a lot of weight on operations in the jungles, in Burma. You could easily adjust the waist on the trousers, and there is a lot of variation in there. Well, a little bit more with these than you'd see with the British 1950 pattern, as we'll see in a minute. You can see they've got a little belt loop here for the belt that comes around, and there's a slit here for the other side to pass through and then buckle on the outside. I'll just turn this around now and we'll have a look at the buckle on the left hand side. You can see on the left hand side here the buckle, which adjusts, and there's one on the other side as well. If we take a close-up look at the buckle here, you can see that the holes in the strap are actually very closely spaced, a lot more closely spaced than on Australian or British manufactured trousers. And this makes these a lot more adjustable. There's a lot more fine adjustment around on the waist, which makes them a little bit more comfortable. You can adjust them closer to your actual waist size. A nice little feature of the design. Having these turned right round here, we can see a detail of belt loops. There are belt loops on each side, and there's one at the rear here. This is not found on the original British pattern, but it was found on the Australian copy of these. Australia also copied the crossover belt design. They added belt loops as well, so I'm presuming New Zealand copied across from that. And you can see we have a rear pocket on the right hand side here. Very simple, just pocket through, a slip pocket through with a lining inside, and then obviously a pointed pocket flap on the outside. All the buttons used are essentially of the same pattern as used on battle dress during the Second World War, the same shape of 4-hole button used there. We'll take these off now and we'll have a look at them in more detail. We'll take a look at the trousers off the mannequin now, just to have a look at some of the details which were a bit too far down to see in full. Leg pocket there, basically copied from the British design of having the single pocket, mat pocket on the side of the leg there. As you can see, pointed flap with a battle dress type button. You can see the pockets at the side here, obviously angled pockets let in off the seam there. We just open these out, you can see the belt loops across the back there, so one on each hip and one at the rear, and you can see they sit over the buckles on each side for the waist adjustment. Okay, we have these turned inside out now. You can see a button fly there with concealed buttons obviously down the front there. These are of battle dress type again. The linings for the 2 hip pockets there. We turn this round, see the lining there for the rear pocket, and a large label in the waistband there, which we'll get a close-up of now. Very clear, very boldly stamped or boldly printed label there. And you can see this reads Defence Property, Tracy Manufacturing, Cambridge Limited, 1974, and these are a size 16. One final thing to note with these turned inside out, you can see at the ankles here there is reinforcement to front and rear on both legs. Where these typically would wear, it's literally doubled over a section of drill and stitched it on there to give some reinforcement, as you can see. So there we are, that was a look at this New Zealand issue shirt and these New Zealand issue trousers. I hope it's been of interest looking at these. As I say, both 70s dated, but possibly introduced prior to the 70s, not entirely clear on that. But nevertheless, I thought it would be interesting to have a look at these, the post-Vietnam manufactured uniform, and obviously what was worn in the 1970s and into the 1980s as well. So as I say, I do hope you found it interesting looking at that. If you have and you'd like to see more from the channel, then please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the little notification button down below, which will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you'd like to support the channel, you can. There's both Patreon and PayPal linked down below, and a massive thank you to everybody, as ever, who supports the channel using those 2 methods. It really is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. There's Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. But that's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.